Everybody, welcome back to another All Counseling webinar. And today is a topic I've been wanting to talk about, and no two better people to talk about mental health marketing than Lindsey Miller and Dr. Kenna Griffin. But before we get into that, I just want to say, I think this topic is the reason for putting this on our agenda at All Counseling is because it's vitally important. My personal experience seeing some of the marketing out there that's done with mental health makes me want to cringe a little bit. And so I think I want to just have this full, deep discussion about the right approach coming into it. It's not just take a business practice and slap it on mental health. There's so much more care and nuance that needs to happen through this. And that's why I asked you two to be here. Since I picked on Lindsey last webinar, I'm gonna start with Dr. Kenna Griffin. Now, before she gets to introduce herself, let you just know I've known Kenna for over 2 decades.
Oh my gosh.
We started our careers together. She went and did incredible things. And I don't know, it's been like 2 or 3 years ago, we got to reconnect. And I love the path she's been on for all this time. So we started our first professional jobs together, which is the cool nuance to this, why I get to geek out on this for a second. But Kenna, would you tell us a little bit about your background, both with communications and marketing and then mental health? Because it's a cool mashup that you two both have.
Sure, absolutely. I should first clarify that I am a doctor who cannot heal you, but can write you a really mean sentence. I started my career in journalism, and that's where Cory and I worked together all of those years ago. And then I became a college professor and collegiate media advisor. I was a journalism professor full-time for 16 years. During that time, I got a master's degree in higher education and a PhD in journalism with an emphasis in trauma, mental health, psychology, and organizational behavior. So I studied the connection between journalism and trauma as a trauma-prone industry. And then when I reconnected with Cory after all those years, he said, we were talking about All Counseling, actually. And he said, you need to meet my wife because she's doing this amazing work in marketing with mental health. And Lindsey and I met, and we geeked out a little bit, honestly, but we just had this incredible connection because we both just believe in this work so much and like doing it and really helping people get the help that they need from accurate and reliable sources who are doing mental health work the right way. So we partnered 2 years ago, Lindsey.
Yeah.
And I flipped to the marketing side. And I think that we offer really unique mental health expertise that you can't get from other agencies.
And I want to say, when I think of journalist, I think Kenna, classic professional, that high bar for how you do work. And then you take this, what was incredible is this path you took, passion with mental health. And I go, wow, two better. We've seen kind of some of the eroding of some journalistic standards in the world. And I go, there needs to be people that still says, let's do it right. And then you pair it with this whole field, which before pandemic, there was an issue. Now it's even bigger issues that people need help. And so I see people, anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but thank you, Kenneth, for being on today. All right, Lindsey, marketing and mental health. Could you share those two parts, particularly about your background?
Yes. And I think it's funny that I get to be in both of them, but my career has led me down both of those paths. So I've been in marketing in one way or another since college. And at some point over the years, had the opportunity to go back to graduate school and pursue my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling, which was something that I always wanted to do when I was in my undergraduate years. I wanted to change. And you know how that feels, like such heavy decisions whenever you're 20 years old and halfway through a degree. And so I did it at the time and always regretted it. And so had the opportunity to do that after I had 2 kids and another career along the way. And now I get to be the owner of a marketing firm and have a master's degree in clinical mental health. And we get to do both and work with mental health clients and get to bring this new perspective in and, I don't know, correct the way that we use language and we use marketing in this space and come at it in I hate that it's a new way because it shouldn't be, but come at it from a person-centered perspective. And I think carry forward our intentions as clinicians and as helpers from the spot of a marketing and sales. As much as we hate to say that, we don't want to say that we're doing that from a therapeutic standpoint, but we are, because we're trying to connect that. But from a marketing standpoint, all the way to somebody calling and entering that doorway, but keeping it the way that it should so that it feels heart-centered and person-centered, and be more authentic in that way, and feel really proud of the work that we do for our clients instead of just going out there and putting work out there just to say that we did it.
So we're going to spend the bulk of this time talking about marketing. Thank you too for sharing a little bit about your background. But before we get into the marketing side, it would be remiss of me. We're in May 2023 talking about this subject, and it is Mental Health Awareness Month. Real quick, I want to take that temperature check on where we are mental health as a global species. And in honor of mental health awareness, I know you all too live and breathe and walk this. I do too. That's why I love doing this work, is because mental health has changed my life. Incredible practitioners, clinicians out there have truly walked with me. And so I'm just curious, thoughts, Mental Health Awareness Month and where we are in this part of human history.
You want to go first, Lindsey?
No, go for it, Kenna. Yeah.
I hope, Cory, that we're getting to a better place. And I say that because, of course, we all have mental health, but we haven't talked about it. And I hope that it's becoming a more open conversation so that there's less stigma around seeking help, and that people are just more aware, maybe, of feelings and emotions and accepting those things very openly than they have been in the past. I think that as a society, we've been very much of a push it down, suck it up, move on with things kind of society. And I hope that we're really moving toward more openness. I think we still have a ton of work to do. And this is one of the things that you and I talked about, I think, very recently, is when people need help, and this is where we come in, they're still going to the internet in the middle of the night when they're ruminating and they're hurting, and it's still a private, and you feel very excluded and alone for a lot of people when you're first seeking help. And I really hope that we can move beyond that, and hopefully we are, in having discussions like this.
We need to take the stigma and completely obliterate it, tear it down, grind it into rubble. It doesn't exist anymore. This is a central facet of who we are. Like you said, we all have this part.
Yeah.
Lindsey?
Yeah, same thing. I think that it's much more forward thinking now than it was even 10 years ago. So I do think that more people are talking about it. We're getting more support, even from our companies and our coworkers and in that space. And there's more technology enabled to make people, even in rural areas, have better access. And so I think, as anything, change takes time, and it happens one person at a time, because I'm a voting person too. So every single vote matters. And so it happens with mental health too, is all of us can make change and can make a difference in our daily lives, and change happens with us. And so I know even at Content Journey, right? Like, we make such big change with each other and our coworkers, and how supportive we are on when we need space. And that, how many times have we heard where anyone has come in and they haven't had that at any other place that they've worked before.
Mhm.
And so that becomes the like rule and not the exception anymore. And we start to be like, okay, no, I expect that to happen. And so I don't know, I feel hopeful. I feel optimistic with where we're headed because of who we're surrounding ourselves with, and because I know the decisions that the people in this room are making, and the people even attending and listening today, that we have a bright future ahead for us.
Lindsay, I think that's something, I'm sorry, Cory, if I can. I think that's so important because you and I and much of our team, we feel like it's our greater responsibility to use our understanding of mental health that we've honed through study and expertise, and to use our understanding of marketing to help make this weller world, right? We really feel like it's very much our obligation to do, even if it's a tiny part, our little part, right? And I think that's a huge thing that you and I bonded over, that's helped us to really build this thing and serve our clients so amazingly. Talking about it more also leads to the problem, though, of there being a lot of junk out there, right?
Yes, absolutely.
A lot
Absolutely.
of faux experts.
Yeah, which leads us into our main topic. But I wanted to spend a little bit of time on honoring and promoting Mental Health Awareness Month, and also to set the stage for these two practitioners, expert marketers, and also with the passion and training in mental health. It all formulates the whole approach, and I think it's going to be the umbrella for which this conversation happens. So thank you for that. But all counseling, that's the bridge. Is we want to support those therapists, practitioners, clinics out there doing great work in our world to make that well world. And then we focus a lot on helping them with their marketing and promotion. So this is the bridge, why I had these two experts on, why we have this conversation today. So let's dive in. Mental health and marketing. And it occurred to me, I saw something you all shared a couple of weeks ago, and why we put this on is that we need raising of the bar of what it means to do marketing and mental health. And I've seen you all for this last several years do it extremely well with much care and attention to it, because you do care. And I think marketing gets such a bad rap so many times because there are public examples of people doing it the wrong way, or people, not just in mental health, but just taking a copy paste approach from business marketing to mental health doesn't work, right? As you all think about, and you work with mental health clients all day, every day, what's the first thing that kind of stands out from all of that? What's some of the comments, thoughts that come to your mind as you think about this topic, mental health marketing?
I do want to say, first off, I don't think that you have to be 100% an expert in any field in order to be a successful marketer. I do think that's a general caveat to be said. Just because Ken and I have expertise in the mental health field and take an extra special care in this part doesn't mean that we aren't also great at marketing for our trucking parts company, right? So there is that to be said, but I do think that because of where we come from, and because of, I think a question has already come in, like there are special regulations around specific industries and special care that we want to take, that it does help to have authority and expertise when you're speaking in this way. And the first step for us whenever we're working in this is to speak from authority and to be authoritative. And so from the moment where we start working with clients, whether that be from collecting data, doing research, whatever that happens to look like, we're doing it from an authority space. And then Kenna's job as our content director is to go out, and we have a writing team, and they're also speaking from authority. So many of our writers have advanced degrees in clinical mental health and have licensures on a variety of topics. That's why All Counseling has a review board that is looking at the things that you're publishing, Cory, to make sure that if they're talking about something, a specific topic, that one of the clinicians on the review board is looking at that topic and saying, okay, yes, this is sound. The research is sound. This is written from an authoritative space and can be published on this site, so that if someone is reading it, they're reading what they should. And Kenna is the one that is looking at and organizing all of those things. And now I'm speaking for you, Kenna.
So Lindsey, but when you say authority, what I hear you saying is you may not, like your parts supply client, for instance, you may not know about the specific parts, but you find compatible experts. Is that like when you say marketing authority and content authority is what I'm presuming, but would you take a second to clarify that?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So if we don't have that specific authority, because there's no way, even though I have a master's degree and Kenna's sitting there with a PhD and this extensive research, that we have the entire breadth of everything there is to know about mental health, that we can talk about every single topic. So if there is something that we need to speak of for one of our clients, we do a lot of addiction and recovery centers, for example, and that's not my specialty. Addiction is not one of the things that I spent a lot of time studying. And so we need to go and find someone that can speak and write to that space and potentially even review that. Kenna might even interview someone at the center to add quotes or to add even more. What am I looking for, Kenna? The more depth
Context
to that. Yeah, more context to that. And also just to make sure that we understand their approach and are speaking to their specialties, right? Because different people are going to use their own ways, therapeutic methods. And so we also want to make sure that we're capturing that.
That's a big one because it's not aligned. Because if you're doing marketing out here, for one, to attract a bunch of people, but it's not aligned with what they actually do, how they do their work, there's a big mismatch. I've seen that a lot too, and I know you all have. Is where what you're selling is not what you bought, the people bought. What are your thoughts on that?
I always say we're not selling a 50-cent Bic, right? The stakes are so much higher in mental health. And I just think it's really important that we make sure that when people take that huge step, and it is a big step for so many people to reach out, that they get what they're looking for, because we know that you can be turned away really easily from a mental health center, from a counselor. And when that happens, it can really be a barrier for people to seek help again. I feel sorry for our writers sometimes when I'm editing, especially if it's one of their sort of first pieces with us and they choose something trauma, which is my expertise. I'm like, oh, bless their heart, because I am so picky. It goes back to that whole idea of do no harm, right? Or minimize harm, that journalistic standard. And if I don't know for sure and I can't find out for sure, or I think just a word can be so alienating, we're not leaving it in there. The attention to detail is just critical, because it only takes one thing to turn a person away from the help that they need and deserve. One word, one photo that doesn't make them feel right or good, that further stigmatizes them, and they're clicking off, they're out the door, and who knows when they might try, or if they might try, to ever seek help again. And I think that's a huge responsibility. It's not the same as selling auto parts. Sorry, it's not like, it's just not the same. And so I think that we have to take that care.
You said it. What I was thinking there was we can inadvertently, if we don't have the right approach, end up promoting the stigma or isolation, or, oh gosh, if we don't have this authoritative approach. So I love starting with that. It seems like the other word paired with authority is alignment. Starting with, in your case, the clients, and aligning too. Like, I know what you both said is we don't know everything, and we go back to their experts. That's what they get paid to do, is offer that solution for someone to come and get treatment or help or support. But if we don't have that authority and alignment in our marketing and our communications on the front side, we could end up doing a little bit more harm, like you said. Okay, so we started with authority. What's next? What comes to mind?
I went first last time, Kenna. Do you have?
We should have had the order.
Yeah, I know, right?
Man, come on, now put me on the spot. I think I touched a little bit on just the importance of accuracy, and people are not diagnoses. So recognizing that you're talking to people and some of them may be in a very vulnerable place, but talking to them in a way that they understand and also can trace back the data, the research, the logic, so that they know you can't just say, trust me. Trust me on this. I'm an expert. Everybody says they're an expert on a lot of things, right? But what we're talking about is a big deal. We're talking about their wellness. So we have to give them the ability to trace that information back, to look at the numbers, to feel less alone. And like you said, Cory, I think it's super important that when they get there, if they actually seek out this treatment, when they get there, it needs to be what we said it was. The last thing we want is for them to get to a treatment center or an addiction center and feel duped. That's not, Lindsey often says, even if it's not with us, even if we're not the right marketing agency for them, even if they don't go to our client, they go to someone else. If they get help, we win. Not everybody's a perfect fit for every treatment center or every addiction center. So I think it's about accuracy in the way we present things, being sensitive in our wording, and helping them trace back that information to legitimate research, to data, not just a trust us here, castor oil kind of news. This is good for you, take it. That's not going to work here.
But what I love about that part, Kenna, that you shared accuracy next, it's come to mind quality, but there's a match, like even to the part supply client that you all have. That's across the board. We're taking a nuanced approach and very tender care. But if someone buys a part, it doesn't work, there's frustration, there's failure there, there's a mistake that happened, there's disruption in the whole process. I think that applies there, but I love that the emphasis on accuracy within this space, because it is critical. We're talking about people's lives, right? And I know, Kenna, and I want you to talk for a second, unless Lindsey, you have something you want to jump in, but I know, and I've seen you all's quality control process, and to say maybe some people want to cry, I go, yeah, yes, you're tough for a reason, but because you want to ensure that accuracy. But can you tell a little bit about either one of you, but the quality control process you're talking about? Because I think it lends to care. We really care about this. We care about the work we're doing, no matter if it is part supply or another company out there in a different field altogether in mental health. But I think it illuminates the process of accuracy and quality.
I think I could use one of our mental health clients as an example and talk about, first we meet with a client and talk about what they're thinking for this particular time frame based on keywords. What do they think that we should be addressing right now? Then we write a full content brief that includes links to research and original data that we trace back to the origins. So not just linking to other blog posts that have linked to the same stuff. Then we have, for this particular client, we do have a licensed counselor who writes for them. So she goes through the writing process. I then edit, typically with her, just for grammar, for not as much on content detail with her because she's much more of an expert than I am. And then we go through a quality control process just to make sure the keywords are there, like we have a specific checklist to make sure we didn't inadvertently miss something and the piece is ready to go. And then at times, depending on the client, we might have review from another counselor. I've noticed that what will happen, all counseling as an example of this, what often happens in that stage is an even greater softening of the language. So instead of saying this equals this may sometimes equal this, right? It's what I tend to see the counselors do, which is really helpful. And then they might also make some suggestions for further information that we want to add, or even add a couple of sentences further explaining a therapeutic approach or something. Then it comes back to me to make sure that nothing grammatically strange happened during that process and accept those changes. Then it goes to the client for their review and approval before it goes on their site. So many pieces will see the eyes of 4, maybe 5 experts before they're published.
So, Lindsey, anything to add to that, or what's next in your process?
What I think is important, especially when it comes to mental health and this industry specifically, is there's a balance between what we call SEO and marketing, and then being accurate in what we're talking about, like the modality, the therapeutic thing, and all of this. So there is a balance that we have to strike of, yes, we have to use the keyword, but we also have to be accurate and mindful and sensitive to what we're trying to say. And so that's why it has to go through all of these different checks of this quality control process, because yes, our experts are writing it, and then Kenneth's checking it. And at each spot of this, we're going, okay, yes, we're making sure that it has this keyword, but is it also doing these things? Is it working for both of this part? Because it can't really do one without the other to still reach the goal of the client, which is a phone ringing or a form being filled out, or, and ultimately someone going and knocking on their door. And so I think that is a part of all of this. We can't just write about something now without having a goal in mind and hitting that, as sad as that is. We can't just journal online anymore and that work for us, sadly.
So I'm already gathering this. There's some takeaways I see is those treatment centers, bigger group practices that are looking for marketing help. There's a couple of questions you already start to ask is who's doing the actual marketing and content creation? That's one. Two is how does your process work for quality? Because you want to ensure whether it's a parts person, brand on widget company, or the mental health practitioner, is it aligned and accurate to what we actually do in the process? And I think that goes for therapists. For therapists, it's okay, demonstrate to your point too, Ken. It's not just trust me, show me that you have experience. As a therapist, I'm not a therapist, but if I put that hat on for a second, I go, okay, I've had all this training. How can I share more of that so people go, this person knows the issues and challenges I'm dealing with, has been trained, has worked with people like me. That's key for marketing, at setting up that know and trust. And then the second is the quality control process. They don't maybe have a team like Content Journey. So could they bounce that off a colleague to get some base feedback? Am I on the right track? Those are just a couple of takeaways for centers, group practices, therapists. I glean from what you've already shared. Lindsey, what's next in this? So we got authority, we got accuracy. What's the next approach to mental health marketing?
Sensitivity. We want to make sure that we're being really sensitive with our language. Kenna already said this as far as how we treat our team internally. And maybe we just go around all the time with our own trauma. And so we just feel like we have guilt and responsibility all the time. But we feel like we have a deep responsibility to handling our clients in the mental health space with care and sensitivity, and to choose language and imagery that is sensitive to where people are in their journey and in their process. And so this means like we talk, because we're still marketers. So we're doing this funnel, right? We're top of funnel all the way to middle funnel, bottom of funnel, like all of these things. So we're helping with ads, we're helping with blog posts and pages and emails and all of the things that go into a marketing strategy. So we're still thinking about these things. But when we do that, we aren't using words like addict. We aren't using imagery of, and I'm actually going to, the examples of people that have come to us from other spaces. The reason why we have leaned so heavily into this space is because what we have seen other people do have really just upset us and infuriated us to the point that we're like, okay, fine, this is our lot in life and this is what we're going to do because this needs to be fixed and be better. But we see images on people's website of needles and piles of drugs and things like that. And I cannot imagine what it would be like if I was in crisis and going to Google and looking something up for a friend or family member or myself, and landing on a web page and feeling like, okay, are you an addict and you're having this problem, and seeing a picture of needles and people passed out. And all of that is true. All of those are things that we have seen from current clients of things that we have had to go and fix. And then they go and those people, if they end up at that treatment center or facility, that isn't the heart that the treatment center actually have. That's not how they're leading their facility, but that's how the marketing company is portraying them to the world. And there's honestly some language that I don't even want to repeat, because it is so offensive, and there are people that are just choosing it based on search volume, and it's atrocious. And so anyway, so for us, sensitivity is really important.
So I can see that. And if I just go, okay, there's a understanding of this and awareness, like part supply. And that's the one you all mentioned earlier. So I'm using it, but I go, I don't know those parts. But I would go to a stock photo, something, and go, okay, part, or if they don't have product photos. So it's a natural inclination for a marketer maybe to go to stock photos, type in drugs, but you get all these things. But also the step further, deeper, the reason why we're having this conversation again with the experts here is you go, hold on, that might be the easiest stock photo to get. And you think it syncs, but we're not taking that empathetic approach on the other side and going, hold on, that could further a problem, trigger a problem, pull people back, not make the phone call, not send the email to get support and help that they might need at the moment. So
absolutely. And I would say it's a core value of ours, and it's in our processes and controls for all clients, that if we are choosing a stock photo or something like that, that we are taking into account people who look different, that they are of different abilities, that they are of different races and genders and clothing styles and all of that. And we do that across the board, just as a general policy of our company. And so it's not mental health specific that we're sensitive towards language in photos, but I do think that when it comes to further propagation of stigmatizing people and making them feel worse about themselves, that we have a deeper responsibility and ethical and moral place where we have to go, we're going to take our time and we're going to think about this a little bit further, instead of just thinking about furthering our own financial space of, okay, they're going to pay us to do this thing, so let's just make sure that we're getting through it as quickly as we possibly can to do the work that they're paying us to do, so that we can go and do it over and over again. And that's not why we're here. We're here doing our work because we care about people. We care about the clients that we work for, because they're doing great work in the world, and we want them to continue to do that. And so we're going to take our time and we're going to be sensitive towards the language. We're going to be sensitive towards those images, because ultimately we want people to go into their doors. We want them to receive that help. We want them to find their recovery journey or their mental health journey and get on the other side of that and continue to do that over and over again. And so I have a belief that if they're going to Google and they end up on something that my team created, and I want to feel really proud of that, because in a lot of cases, that's sometimes the beginning of what could be a fundamental turning point for someone.
Well, you illustrate a point too, and this is where marketing can go right. Is if it's just about the bottom line, the result, and you don't have care that you've shared in sympathy, sensitivity, but also empathy, care about the client, care about their customer. It makes a world of difference. This is where marketing goes astray in every other field too. But I love that this is a great example for the back to the rest of the industry, like basic care. Kenneth, do you have any thoughts too and perspectives on sensitivity as the approach to mental health marketing?
I'm thinking about that journalistic concept of fighting words, and I don't know if you remember this, if you can rewind.
It's a test.
I said you were the pro, not me.
So fighting words are the legal idea, and that there are words that on their face are offensive. And when I teach media law, I argue that there's really no such thing as fighting words anymore because we are so desensitized to language. But in mental health marketing, there are absolutely words that on their face are offensive. And I think addict is an enormous example of this, right? And we have to think of that in two different ways, because we have to think with our SEO and research hats on and go, okay, what is someone going to search for? So for example, I might search for, am I an addict? That makes sense as something someone would seek out. But when I get to that post, what I don't want to see is some of those photos that Lindsey talked about, or the word addict over and over, or the labeling of me. There's no positive way to call someone an addict. Nobody says, I want to grow up and be an addict. So we have to be really careful not to label people with their diagnoses. Also, I go back again to do no harm. Like, I'm thinking about a post on rape trauma, and the photo on it was a woman sitting on a bed wrapped in a sheet crying. 1 in 5 women is raped at some point in their life. How are they meant to feel when they see that photo? I'm trying to get help. I'm trying to see, do I have trauma as a result of this? Is this still affecting me? And then I'm triggered by a photo that I see, and maybe even so much so that I don't even consume the information that's on that page. So if we have to think of them as people, not as victims, not as empowered survivors, not as a diagnosis, but people who are seeking information that we can give them in a really helpful, sincere, careful way.
Yep.
It seems like Lindsey was saying, it's going that extra step and saying, how do we want them to feel
Right.
when they're at this stage? And is it further into stigma, and or is it hope, help, those type of things? But that sensitivity that you all bring to this is incredible. And I know, Lindsey, you volunteered when we met 13, 14 years ago. We're doing crisis rape counseling and then some of the stories you shared with me illuminated a whole other sensitivity and it helped me understand that. And I think that's a level, again, showcases what you all bring to the subject. But Lindsey, anything else on sensitivity before we move on?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you for this. So far, we've got authority, accuracy, and sensitivity. This is fleshing out the picture of what is the right approach to mental health marketing. What's next?
Being intentional. And this is really important because I think that whenever we do any type of marketing for anyone, we have to come in with a plan. You have to know what you're doing. And we talk about this in some of our other webinars that we've done for All Counseling too, or some of the ones that you've done, Cory, but it's planning out your month. Or it doesn't have to be your 6-month plan or your year plan, because I know that can feel really overwhelming, especially if you're a single therapist in your practice by yourself. But even if it's just thinking about your month and being really intentional about what you're going to do for that time period, it's about it having an intentionality of what you're going to do. And I know, like, marketers get a bad rap, and probably me too, by going through like gut instincts. I do a whole lot of just, I feel like I should try this thing out, and going with my intuition. It does work out a lot, but as Kenna giggles, but really we have to go back to our data and our research and have a plan and then execute on that plan. And that's really basic for anything, is having goals, having intention, and then following through on it.
I don't know where you're going with this, Lindsey, but it's funny because when you would engage a marketing agency or think about marketing, you all have put this where I think results, connection to an outcome. Okay, we've gotten you here. And most people, me, go, okay, let's talk about results first. But you all, I kind of laugh because I love it. The first 3, you haven't even talked about that. If you're going with results and outcomes and connecting to specific things, like, okay, they get on the page or the website and then they make a call to the treatment center, or they book a consultation with the therapist. It's funny because you all have said, hold on a minute. There's 3 things we need to even think about and address and talk about before we get to intention, which I gather might be results, but is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's planning, it's looking at analytics, it's like figuring out what you do. Because for me, with anyone, we're going to have the intention first. But I think it's important when we're talking about mental health to talk about all of those other things that we addressed first today, because it's very specific to this industry, whereas having intention is with everything. But the other three pieces, and maybe even our fifth, are really specific to mental health and knowing that. But approaching it with intention, looking at analytics and analyzing all of that, figuring out where it's working, that is really just a solid approach to any marketing plan.
Yeah.
We're a people first company, right? So as cliche as that sounds, what in the steps that we've introduced right now is that we put the people first. We put the mental health, we put the caring, we put all of that first. And now it's, oh, by the way, we also are a marketing company. Like, we're not just winging it here. We're going to do your SEO research. We're going to monitor your analytics and adjust as needed to meet your goals. We absolutely want to be able to help our clients accomplish their goals, especially in this space, because the outcomes are so critical. I think also one of the things that we talked about a little bit internally is that some of these agencies can make it look like, oh, this is going to be so easy. Like, you call us and then you do XYZ counseling for 2 minutes and your addiction is healed. And I think that really sets these clients up for failure too, because it's just not that simple. So while we want to be able to represent them in a way that offers hope and healing and opportunity and a different kind of life, we also want to recognize that it's challenging. And one of our mental health clients is very clear about the fact that addiction is forever. And this is something that we can help you heal from, and we can help you move into recovery, but you're always going to be in recovery, right? So we don't want to create this sort of rainbows and unicorns scenario where people just think, oh, I'll go to this place in the mountains for a week and I'll be voila, cured. But yes, the intentionality is where the marketing aspects, doing all of those solid things, definitely come into this.
So we're learning about the nuances, we're learning, we're getting authoritative people involved into the marketing. And then Lindsey, you start to go, okay, now we're starting to put a plan in place. We're looking at things, we're seeing, okay, what do you have now? And that's for even any therapist. What have you mentioned analytics, Lindsey? So I go, a therapist may have Facebook page, website. So what do we have?
Business, right.
Google My Business. And now you preach that. Specifically, by the way, we've done a lot of training for those listening now into the recording. We've done a lot of training in all counseling, leveraging the expertise from Content Journey to talk about this because it matters, Lindsey.
Yes.
But I digress. Google My Business, just Google it and go get your profile today. There's training at allcounseling.com that you can look at for that specific thing. But so Lindsey, we're looking at what we have here is that we're starting to formulate a plan. What comes next? Now lead us through that process. Next step.
Yeah. So our final piece of our framework is understanding the nuances of each place that we're working with. And for anyone listening to us from All Counseling, it's also where you get to talk about your individual unique approach, right? And so for us at Content Journey, this is where we have to understand that unique piece for our clients so that we can talk about the differences. And this is where you get to differentiate yourself with where your uniqueness gets to stand out. And so even though we work for many different mental health clients, they all have different ways of expressing that. Even if they're under the same umbrella and they have multiple facilities, they have different ways at different facilities of talking about how they handle or approach their clients, and even similar services, if you will. And so but it's our job to understand that so that we can then speak about it and go back to whatever step it was, first step or second step, and speak about it from an authoritative space. But we have to understand it in a really fundamental way so that we can speak from authority, so that if somebody comes in, we can talk about it accurately, so that whenever somebody calls them, that they know what to expect. And so that's where our framework is all fitting back in together now, is in how they're all tied in together.
So we're starting to connect. We said the right approach, and there's a path that every customer takes, i.e. content journey, why you branded the company the way you did. And so it's getting intentionally planning what you got in place. And then now, okay, what are the services you offer, so that we're connecting, marketing's job, connect, right approach. Now we're from SEO, Google My Business, whatever the tactic is, to connect them into the services where someone goes, I'm ready to become a client to them, and we're exchanging something, a service here, money here. And it seems like we're really getting to the, okay, rubber meets the pavement kind of conversation.
I have this certification, I work with EMDR, or I use this different modality. And so now we get to start talking about this. I am trauma focused. I am there's a trauma informed, right? So there's all of these nuances, trauma focused and trauma informed. I'm talking to a bunch of clinicians. We all know those sound similar, but they are different. And so we have to understand those nuances so that we can speak about it from an authoritative space, and then be accurate, so that if somebody does call them from one of those listings because of our content, that it all is very seamless for them.
So the understanding is the bridge. We've understood customer and the right approach, and we're leading them into a path that's right for them, which kind of boils down to, in business term, a service, a treatment program, a series of consultations leading to therapeutic appointments or something like that for a therapist.
Absolutely. Was there another piece about understanding, Kenna, that I left off?
I think the important thing is that it's not a one size fits all situation, and the clinicians who are listening totally get that, right? Because they know that you would do the same counseling approach differently depending on the individual. And the same is true for our clients. Not all of them offer the same things in the same ways, like you said. So helping to make that fit, I think, is what's really important, so that when people do seek treatment, it feels right and good to them, and they can get the help that they need. I never thought about it before, amazingly, until you were talking about it just now, like how much of a heavy lift that must be for someone who, I don't know what brain spotting is, but I know that this clinic specializes in it. I've got to figure out what brain spotting is, and then I've got to sell it to the right people, where we're in some ways already ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Just because we have that foundational understanding that maybe others don't, that helps us pair the right people. That's what I really hope, that we just get people to treatment that feels right for them, so that they can really benefit from it instead of still feeling maybe lost.
Absolutely.
I was thinking, Ken, about background with communications really is what journalism is: sharing things, communicating, and marketing at its best is connecting the right people with the right problem or solutions, services, things like that. Like marketing at its best is when you're able to do that connection. And so when we get to this understanding phase, now you're diving in, Lindsey, to go, what do you offer? And we're working back to pair that right path. Because if someone, for instance, apologize if I don't use the correct words, but like deals with eating disorders, they may not be appropriate and right fit for someone else. So if we bring traffic or we bring attention, people to the doorstep, we've got a mismatch there, and they need to find the right person or group to help with that particular challenge.
Cory, I thought about this last night. I feel like I'm living my best life right now and doing this work and doing it at Content Journey. But I thought about how for years I gave people news that they needed. Here, you need this information, take it. Now I get to offer people information that they're seeking, that they want, like in an area that I feel uniquely qualified to provide that information in. What a great position to be in. I can help you find the information you need instead of trying to give you the information I think that you should have.
Like you said earlier in the thing, in this particular arena, most people, because it's still stigmatized, that are probably privately searching for those answers. Where do you want that? And you said like at night on their phone or in a break or something, where they're privately seeking these. Best place that they might find is Google, is those search engines, and then leading them to the appropriate place and people.
And my
So
mental health can be my private business. It's totally fine for me to search, was I sexually assaulted? What is sexual assault? That's not something that I might want to share with friends or
Yep.
loved ones, but that doesn't mean that I don't need information or help. And I feel privileged, and I know that Lindsey does too, to be a part of giving people that information. It's just so important.
Absolutely.
So I only have a couple more minutes. I want to be sure we address some questions that have come in, but anything else that you think of that a parting takeaway in this topic of mental health marketing and the right approach to it? Lindsey, anything come to mind that you wanted to share? And Ken, I'll ask you too.
I think just hammering home that we do have a responsibility to do this the right way, because it's just so important to get it right. It's just so important to get it right. And I want us to be proud of the work that we do in this space. And I'm really glad that we're able to step up and be the ones to get to do this work. And I don't know, I'm really excited to be the team that is going to be doing this and leading us into a new era. And I think we're going to touch a whole lot of lives. And I'm really excited about that.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Ditto. Absolutely.
So thank you. To recap real quick: authority, the right approach to mental health. And Lindsey, you just said getting it right is vitally important. So we're not going to shy away from the right approach. The right approach is start with authority, accuracy, ensure accuracy. Next, sensitivity, making sure we don't have those stigmatizing type stock photos in our blog posts that just further the problem. We lead with intentionality in everything we do. And then the last is understanding. So we connect all those things. So the right people get to the right groups and clinicians that need help and support. Thank you too. I wanted to hear all this. We needed to hear all this. I think it's vitally important to raise the standard of marketing in this industry, even if they don't choose all counseling. But I really appreciate you too, your time, sharing your experience, your expertise, and beliefs about this at All Counseling, because our therapists struggle with this. They're working on this. We want them to stay in the camp of help people doing their work, and the marketing and business side needs to come second. That's where we come in with All Counseling. But I appreciate you all's time, sharing all this expertise, the right approach, the path to think about this, whether someone is at a treatment center listening to this, trying to find someone to help with their marketing, or that therapist out there trying to build their practice and create that world that we try to champion at All Counseling. But thank you too today. Where can we find more information about you two?
So you can find out more about the business at contentjourney.com. We're on all of the social medias channels. And yeah, Kenna and I are both on LinkedIn. Kenna's on and I are on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle? It's not your name. It's Prof
KRG, Kurt. Yeah. KRG.
And then I'm Lindsey Miller WP on Twitter. And then you can find us by our names on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'd love to connect.
If you want to see some pros in action, go follow their accounts on LinkedIn and Twitter, whatever your social medias are. But thank you all too. And thank everybody else for being here today. Another allcounseling.com webinar. We're going to continue to be doing these throughout the summer in 2023, excuse me. So I hope you'll come back, sign up for these. We're going to be pulling more experts on, and I'm sure we'll be asking you to come back. So thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks.